Hello, it's DCS News. It's the 12th of March 2022. I just thought I'd do a little something funky there and add a little Newsbeat sound effect. So, yesterday, shortly before midnight, so we're talking about 3 hours ago, Eagle Dynamics just released a new update. I'm going to put that onto the screen now for you and go through it on the 11th of March. Dear fighter pilots, partners and friends, DCS World War II Marianas Map is making steady progress. We are confident that you will enjoy our reaction to these strategic islands of the specific theatre of operations as they were in 1944, shortly before the battles of the Mariana Islands. Of course, they were property of the Japanese Imperial Army until the Americans fought there. We can also confirm imminent update of the DCS Syria map. We'll take a look at some of the screenshots there in a sec. Our partners, Erga Media, have yet again set a very high standard for their terrain and map objects, and I can confirm that is the case. These updates extend the map to the east and include eastern Syria as well as portions of western Iraq. If you remember, Wags teased some of those western Iraq areas several months ago in a video. Well, it looks like these things are really moving on, so we'll check those development screenshots in a sec. We would also like to reassure you the fantastic feedback from our closed beta testing team. We are further tuning this is the new update, the Apache here, the multi-crew and crushing bugs, especially in multiplayer. So it's great to know that they're actually getting on with this before the release, because there's nothing worse than being excited for a module, jumping into it and getting so disappointed because it barely works. So, little props here. Explore the defensive systems available at the launch in Wags' latest AH-64 Delta defense systems and his landing videos. Well, if you haven't yet seen them, check them out. But if you have seen them, I've got a better one that Wags just did. It's only about 3 or 4 hours ago, and it's on the F-16. So I'm going to link that after this video. Make sure you check that out. This may be your last chance to take advantage of the 30% pre-price purchase. Thank you. Well, you know what? They have the pre-purchase price until it launches. They usually keep it generally for the day of the launch, and then after that, it's gone. So if they're saying this may be your last chance, maybe they're saying it's going to come before the end of March, because, of course, that was originally what Wags said is guaranteed to come before the end of March. Let's have a little look over now onto some of the screenshots. By the way, just before we do check out the screenshots, I've got one thing to show, and that is that, you know, when the Americans, this is in real life now, went in World War II and they went over these Pacific Islands. Do you remember there was a story and it went like this? Let me get rid of this. That on a remote vote, as soon as I saw it, I thought, what was that island? And it's where the American soldiers are worshipped like gods. And it's because in World War II, the American soldiers would be on these Pacific Islands and they would send off these chitties saying what they needed, right? We need so many tons of food or rations or fuel. We need new clothing or equipment, whatever it was. And then a day later, a week later, a month later, depending on what they asked for, there would come the new supplies. So whether it would be shipped in or dropped in from plane was irrelevant. The fact is, to these islanders, it looked like the gods were bringing them all this equipment. And so that's what it reminded me of. And of course, here's some of these World War II pictures from these areas. And that is one of the areas in the Marianas that DCS is trying to create. So it was, here you see some of the examples here. You see these islanders and they've created this wooden model of a plane because, of course, that's how you get the gods to listen and bring you this stuff, right? So a very interesting, unrelated tidbit there, I grant you. So let's have a look at the screenshots. Here we see some of the development screenshots here. Clearly some sort of new airbase. On the Western Syria map, we've got the Apaches here. And of course, I do remember one of these refineries, if that's what this is here. It looks like a refinery or a huge concrete works or something. We've seen it tease again a few months ago in one of Wags' videos. We see one of these, what looks like the fire practice here for an aircraft, the fire engine practice there. What looks like a very long runway with the little scramble access points at either end. We'll continue on. Anybody, prize of the week, what is this plane here? Perhaps there's another clue there in a hardened bunker shelter. The hardened shelters, of course, nothing new to that particular map. Here we see a couple of F-18s starting fires. You know, there's many people that give the F-18 a hard time and, you know, the sort of, oh, the F-16 is sexy, the F-18, it's for girls, it's a wimpish, boring plane. And I just think, I always thought the F-16 was the most beautiful, sexy-looking plane ever. As a kid, when I knew nothing about fighters, it just looked nice. But you know what? The F-18 was the first aircraft in DCS that basically did a little bit of everything, and I can't let that go. It's super high detailed. Yes, the F-16 is rapidly catching up with it, and the fact that the F-16 just goes a little bit faster and does certain things arguably a little bit better, but not all. It's definitely a close contest between these two, and of course the A-10C Charlie 2. In any case, here we definitely have a new city. We've got a river here, we've got a city here, and I have flown around all of the maps, and DCS Syria map being no exception. Having a large city like this by this river is definitely a new one on me. Nothing too exciting. It's quite flat terrain, which means if there's a SAM site in this town, you're certainly going to have to be brushed up on your defensive skills if you want to take this one out. I guess another runway. Here we've got a hydroelectric plant and what looks like a large body of water, whether it's a lake or part of the sea. What I will tell you is this is going to be the primary target in many, many missions to come. We've got the electric wires here. We've got plenty of hydroelectric related buildings here. So whether you're actually attacking the wall itself or this thing, I'm probably going to guess this thing because I doubt they will have animated the water crashing down if you attack the wall. But you never know. Eagle Dynamics, if you're listening, we would love to see water spilling out if we attack. More screenshots with the Apache, no doubt, in the new base as well. We've got the very not so good looking American flag there. It looks like it's in the middle of the shade, yet it's very sunny. So perhaps that's something that they can work on in a future update. But certainly the Apache looking absolutely fantastic, as well as the support vehicles looking much better too. Here we see now some of the screenshots of the Marianas Island. And bearing in mind, this is now, it's the same place, but it's from the World War II time period, not the modern time period, which is what we have now. And you see, vegetation-wise, looking very similar, but look at the old thatched buildings here and there. Look at that. If you look really carefully, there's a wishing well behind that one, and you see that little circle thing. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a stone well or something like that behind there. But yeah, looking very good. Here we have another view. One thing that I find really impressive, look at this. See this house? It's on these wooden stilts, but look at the stilts. They're shorter on the left-hand side, longer on the right, because the terrain, if you look, is sloping uphill. That is an insane amount of detail. I wonder how that if that works on houses on the other side of the hill as well, but either way, looks fantastic. Look at this house up here with the big roof, that penthouse suite, I'm imagining. This kind of detail is just insane for a flying game, especially when you consider how large the islands are. I do hope the penalty on the frame rate isn't too bad. I know that the latest Marianas map, the frame rate, it wasn't entirely too friendly, was it? It's considering that the islands were so small compared to some of the maps, it's like the frame rate really tanked, and I'm imagining that's because of this insane detail. But that said, the latest channel map from Eagle Dynamics, that's really high detailed, and although that did impact the frame rate a lot in the early days, they've certainly optimized that, and that runs as well as me now for any other. Look at this one here. We've got the blossom in the trees. Once again, this sloping terrain with the house. We see the stilts higher on the right than they are on the left. We've got some stalls and some washing hanging up on the lines. It just looks incredible. Oh, it wasn't a stone well, it was wood, but either way. And then, of course, we come back to the last week's news, which was that the main developer of this helicopter is now back from apparently a long time being sick, which goes to explain why, was it Casmo or somebody who teased a video with this helicopter, and it was at least 12 months ago now, probably even longer, and it was like, well, what happened to it? Well, the answer was that the main guy was sick for most of last year, but apparently that's been resolved now. And then, of course, we come on to the previous week's news. So we've seen that. So one last thing before we go, and I promised that I would cover this, the video by Wax. I'm not going to play it all. I invite you to go and see it. But what I am going to show you is just this little bit on takeoff, because this is what I'm excited about.
One of the biggest items in the update will be the tuning of the G onset and instantaneous turn.
Right, let me skip to the takeoff. This is what's exciting me.
Let's take a look at this in action. This will steering on. So the first item we'll take a look at is that before, when you took off and you had gear and flaps up, there'd be a bit of a pitching up moment on the nose, which we've addressed. So let's take a look.
In other words, when you take off, you bring gear up and you like to accelerate down the runway nice and fast, because of course that's cool to do, especially for the camera, right? You used to have to fight a little bit with the stick up and down as the flaps and whatnot changed shape. The flight model would go up and down, and he calls it a moment, which is absolutely the right word. It's great to hear people using the right terminology for this kind of thing. So what they've changed now, and you can watch the video to see it in full, as well as all the other changes in the F-16, is it no longer does that. It stays almost rock steady, which means no more fighting with the controls, which means you can get even lower after takeoff and make it look even sexier. So I can't wait for that. It's an exciting bunch of updates. I'm looking forward to it, especially the Apache. Remember, we've been promised it before the end of March. And of course, with that message here saying, where are we? That this may be your last chance to take advantage of the 30% pre-price purchase. That might mean it might even come sooner. If this might be the last chance, well, how soon? I'm absolutely excited. And last but not least, community multiplayer and training servers running PvP and PvE. Modern and historic events are the way to go. Absolutely. Check out the 4YAR server Discord. It's really good seeing them support the 4YAR servers, because they have been springing up for well over a year now, and they've just spread like a positive cancer. It's absolutely fantastic to see the numbers of players on there now. I'm not exactly sure what the difference is, but when I look on the multiplayer servers today, it's got to be 3 or 4 times the number of players that were there even just 12 or 18 months ago. It's lovely to see Eagle Dynamics and their DCS game finally taken off. So until next time, wherever in the world you may be, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.